Mark Carney has 3 passports: Canada, United Kingdom, Ireland. A globalist with options. He hasn't seen Canada in a decade. Calls himself a European, not a Canadian.
As a European, I am a European, actually.
Oh, you are?
I'm citizen.
Told U.S. Congress last year he's a Brit. He's back to lord over you. Canada's not his home. It's his throne.
Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. So it is Good Friday, folks, and I wouldn't normally do a show today, but because we had that debate last night, we had to cover it. We had to do a reaction show. So we are going to talk about the debate, how it played out. I think Pierre Poilievre had the strongest night of his campaign so far. We're going to talk about whether or not it mattered. And then, yes, we will get to the shenanigans, the complete and utter breakdown of the legacy media, of the debates commission, canceling the scrum to try to stop Cian Bexley from asking another devastating question of Mark Carney, or maybe trying to stop Alex Zoltan from doing the same. So we're going to get to all of that today. I'm very pleased to be joined by a great new guest. I've never had him on the show today, but I'm quite excited. His name is Wyatt Claypool. He's a political commentator and founder of the National Telegraph. He has a YouTube channel. His videos are so insightful. This is a very smart person, so very pleased to have him on the show. Wyatt, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. I would want to be doing nothing else but analyzing the debate for the next 24 hours, even if it is Good Friday, because, I don't know, I'd live for it. I'd crawl the walls if I tried to do anything else.
Well, I feel that way too, although I am trying to give my children like a religious education. And I think Good Friday is supposed to be the most somber day of our Christian year. And so I try to use this day to teach them and obviously to go to church and all that kind of thing. But I could not record a show today, just given what happened last night. And I do think it will have an impact on the election. I think that Pierre Poilievre may have saved his campaign last night. I think he may have won the election last night. I don't want to be too overconfident because this tends to happen with conservative commentators. Myself, I do lean conservative. I do lean to the right. I don't always vote conservative, but I will be this time. I think Pierre Poilievre absolutely knocked it out of the park. That was the strongest that I've seen him. I don't think that he's run a perfect campaign. I'm not one of those people that say like he's run a flawless campaign. I think he has made some errors and mistakes. I won't dwell on them now. I'll talk about them after the campaign ends. But last night, I think he redeemed himself. I think that he came out swinging. He looked confident. He looked poised. He looked prime ministerial, and he did what he needed to do. I'm curious, what were your takeaways and what were your thoughts on the debate, Wyatt?
Well, first off, it actually did confirm something I had said about the French debate the previous night, that Poilievre, we're giving letter grades, I gave him a B- in the French debate. He didn't come off abrasive like the media tries to paint him, so he would have just, proven people wrong in Quebec that he's this abrasive Trump-like figure. He had some good answers, had a couple good jabs, but it wasn't brilliant. And I thought he was saving himself for the English debate. Why telegraph a bunch of your best attacks in French that Mark Carney and the Liberal crew can then write up good answers for the, frankly, the real debate? Because the Conservatives don't have that much to gain. They don't have that many seats they could win in Quebec. They can really just hold on to their incumbents and maybe grab up a Montreal suburb or Mount Royal, and that's pretty much it. This debate, Pierre Poilievre may want to lock up murderers for the rest of their lives, but he committed a murder on stage of Mark Carney. And I'm not trying to be like a cheerleader here. I gave him a B- the previous night. To this night, he basically did everything he needed to do. He would wallop Carney, and then he'd go back to looking right down the barrel of the camera, and then turn into positive Pierre, and that I have a positive vision for the country, and this is how we fix our problems. It was very well handled. I know some people are even saying he should have gone more aggressive. No, he was perfect with his amount of aggression because he needed to snake it always back into I have a positive vision so that he doesn't play into the unfair media narrative again that he is an abrasive, pugilistic, Trump-like figure who you cannot vote for if you believe in Canadian values or whatever.
I agree, because I think that what the Liberal plan was, what the strategy was to paint Pierre Poilievre as mini Trump, as Canada Trump. And from a fair-minded view of a fair-minded Canadian watching that debate, there was just no comparison. Like you cannot watch Pierre Poilievre and see any comparison to Trump. And I think that line of argument was just absolutely eviscerated last night. Like, they didn't even try, right? Like, you could see that Poilievre's strategy, especially towards the end, was to try to tie Mark Carney to Justin Trudeau and try to say this is just a continuation of Trudeau's government. He was an advisor, he was there, and this is a fourth Liberal term. That was the comparison that really stuck and really stood out. I didn't even hear them trying to compare him to Trump. I feel like the Trump angle of this election has become moot. It's no longer relevant. It's no longer the driving issue of the campaign. It was hardly even really the focus of the debate last night. I thought that the Liberals and the NDP were going to really go hard on President Trump. We saw that a bit more in the French debate. But you could see after 2 hours on stage, the focus of the debate, as it rightly should have been, and I give the moderator, Steve Paikin, a great deal of credit for this, it was on life in Canada, on the issues, the day-to-day issues for everyday Canadians, cost of living, housing, crime, even immigration. Those are the important issues of our country, and that was the focus. And so any kind of line of argument to say that the Conservatives are like Trump, it just didn't work and it fell flat. So Wyatt, I want to show, we put together a little montage of what I thought were the highlights of the debate. It's a bit on the longer side, it's 3.5 minutes, but we are going to see the highs and the lows. I would say that most of the lows were around Jagmeet Singh and his annoying habit of just interrupting everybody nonstop. But I also think from this montage, you can see how Poilievre was shining his confidence, and you could see Mark Carney was just sort of flat, sort of stale, boring, dry. I don't know if they were trying to make him come across as just like a boring person, like you want the prime minister to be boring, especially after 9 years of Justin Trudeau. But I think that is another takeaway. So let's play this clip, and if at any point you want to pause it, just let us know, and we'll pause it and talk about it. So let's play that clip.
You claim to be very different from Mr. Trudeau. Now, the point is to show that you are any better than Mr. Trudeau.
The No New Development Law, C-69, guarantees there will not be one-stop shop because it requires the Government of Canada to actually duplicate the same project.
Have no regulation.
Have one-stop shop.
Mr. Singh, over any energy development.
We just got to let him finish his sentence.
Let's just let him finish his sentence.
Multiple levels of referral that it takes now 17 years to get a major project approved in this country. In the entire G7, we cannot afford a fourth Liberal term.
Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil exports by 50% in this country. That is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it.
Keystone is not owned by Canada. That's an American pipeline.
And the question of what to do it. So it's not a subsidy that has disappeared. It's actually an asset of Canada.
Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that you are any different than the previous 10 years of Liberal government?
That was the moment in the debate where Mark Carney just wrecked permanently.
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much.
You say you are a great negotiator. What have you negotiated but fiscal paradises in Bermudas or Cayman Islands? You have to prove something, and you have to reveal what you own in those companies if you want people to believe you.
Since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance and you've refused, why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision, because it has allowed me to speak freely. At all my rallies, even when they're really big, I would stand in front of a flag and greet every single person and hear their stories and learn their struggles. And that was always touching to me, that they would put their faith in me or in any of us.
Yeah.
But we've been in such a rush because we have to get off to the next event, so we haven't been able to stop and do that. And I want you to know out there, I haven't forgot about you.
So those were, I thought, the key moments of the debate. Wyatt, what did you think?
Well, even then, we had to be pretty selective with what we play, because you could just frankly watch every single response Pierre Poilievre had, especially when directed at Mark Carney, and it could be considered a highlight. Mark Carney there, and I really, really liked Poilievre's attack on him for all of the Liberal staffers who are just holdovers from Justin Trudeau to him, that Mark Carney literally does not have a different government than Justin Trudeau in any way, shape, or form. Even the people that are writing scripts for him are the exact same. That was the moment, I think, that Mark Carney's debate basically wrecked hard permanently. Even in that clip, if people go back and they listen to it, you can literally hear Yves Francois Blanchet saying, oh, ouch, that's bad. Because he's like on hot mic reacting to how like just nasty of an attack that is. And again, every time Mark Carney would start getting attacked by Pierre Poilievre, he would just look like such a sourpuss for the next couple of minutes. Like he'd start gripping the podium really hard, looking down his notes, or just looking forward like he's some disappointed lizard. It was just, the optics were bad. Mark Carney's answers did not give any confidence to the soft Liberal supporters that the Liberal Party is currently relying on. Now, I think many of the pollsters have a problem oversampling urban Liberal areas, but even when you poll Liberal supporters and Conservative supporters on how likely they are to show up and vote for their chosen party, Conservatives are at like an 80% rating for confidence, whereas Liberals only had around 63-65% saying they're definitely voting Liberal. There is a large chunk of Liberals who, watching that debate, they may have, had things confirmed about Mark Carney that were making them not super confident to show up, and now they might not at all.
Yeah, I think that's right. I sometimes do wonder, how much of an impact do these debates really have? We were talking about this before we went to air, that I think the debates were scheduled way too late in the election cycle. I think that we're talking about the final week here. We're going into the long weekend, the Easter long weekend, and I'm not sure how much these debates will really move the needle. I think it would have been more helpful to have the debates at the beginning of the campaign so people could see the clips, they could think about it, it could inform their decision early on before they've really set their mind in stone. But your point about how, conservatives are reliable voters and the people who vote conservative are really fired up about it. And I think that Pierre Poilievre represents certainly the best candidate that the Conservatives have had in the last decade. You could even argue that he is more conservative than Stephen Harper. And I think that there is a lot of excitement around him. Whereas Mark Carney, it's hard to get excited about him. He comes across as just very out of touch and very flat. I really thought he was low energy last night. He was boring. He just didn't really have the fire in his belly that Pierre Poilievre had. I have been hearing from people around the GTA that have been campaigning for the Conservatives saying that it's rough out there. That when you go door knocking, it seems like a lot of people in and around, especially the 905, are going to be voting based on the Trump tariff issue. That didn't really seem to be the central issue of the debate last night. To me, it seems like that moment is over, that the news cycles have moved on, and that Trump is not front and center in the campaign anymore. As much as Mark Carney tries to make it, I don't know if you noticed this last night, Wyatt, but Mark Carney used the word crisis about 100 times. Everything was a crisis. It was the tariff crisis, the climate crisis.
Fundamentally, we need to catalyze this crisis in Canada.
Right, and it's like that was the one thing that he was coached on. Just keep using the word crisis. When Canadians are in fear, when they're nervous, when they're afraid, that's when they're going to vote Liberal. And so that was his one thing that he kept going back to. But it just didn't seem to work. I don't think it broke through last night. I think that there is a cost of living crisis in Canada, and I think that can very plainly be drawn to the Liberals. And so I guess I just want to know, do you think that this debate will have an impact? Will it move the needle? And was it enough?
It definitely will, because people, when they think about did this debate matter, they're wondering if it's going to be kind of a cavalry charge moment where the Conservatives go from being at 39% in the polls, they overtake the Liberals, and they hit 52. No, elections aren't won like that. The Conservatives need, in my estimation, if they can beat the Liberals in the popular vote by 1.5 or so, they have a minority government. The Conservative vote over the past 4 years has actually become more efficient than it's used to be, because it used to be a very regional party where in Alberta you would win rural ridings by Saddam Hussein numbers, you get 89% of the vote, but in the GTA you're dropping ridings and you're only getting 25%, and the Liberals are able to pull out 35% victories over you. I think that in this election, the Liberals have actually gained vote in places like Saskatchewan and Alberta, especially with, not to stereotype, but with older boomer voters who watch a lot of legacy media and don't like Donald Trump very much. But the Liberals are also gaining a lot of votes in places that they just don't need it or it's not useful to them. They're gaining votes in Montreal. Cool, Montreal was already the reddest place on the planet. Right. And then you go to Saskatchewan, and when, the Liberals have gained votes, and maybe they have a chance at one riding. Whereas the Conservatives, their gains that they've made have mostly been in working class neighborhoods all around the country. So the Conservatives could potentially, obviously, lose this election, or they could win big, winning Hamilton ridings they never thought they were going to get, winning the southwest of Ontario, sweeping it, winning actually ridings in the Ottawa area. I've been door knocking in the Ottawa area, and there was a chance to win Nepean. There's absolutely a chance to win Canada. I was in a few polls in Canada yesterday, and I would say the sign ratio between the Conservative candidate Greg Kung and the Liberal Jenna Sudds is like 2-1 or 3-1.
Wow, that's interesting. One thing I heard you say on your YouTube channel, Wyatt, was that you thought that from these debates, and particularly the French one, that you saw what could potentially be two different coalitions forming. Something along the lines of, Jagmeet Singh is obviously there for the Liberals, and that's his purpose. I don't know that he'll win a seat. I kind of think his career is finished. But that you potentially saw that Blanchette and Pierre Poilievre could form a minority coalition government together. Did I get that right? Is that what you said? And tell us about that.
Yeah, so the reason why the Bloc Québécois and the Conservatives would go well together almost has nothing to do with ideology. On many issues, the Bloc are to the left of both the Liberals and the NDP. They're anti-nuclear energy. They're quite to the left when it comes to issues around business taxes and equalization and whatnot. A very pro-equity type party. The way that they define Quebec culture tends to be very left. At the same time, the problem is the Bloc Québécois' long-term survival as a party relies on the Liberals basically being defeated. If the Bloc Québécois just upholds the Liberals again, they'll run into the same problems that Jagmeet Singh and the NDP currently have, where what's the point of voting for you if I can get the same thing by just voting for the Liberals, and they usually have a better chance of winning the election anyways. So the Bloc need to effectively box the Liberals into the Montreal area and hold on to all those semi-rural suburban ridings in the Montreal kind of donut. If they don't, well, the Bloc are going to be back in the woods like they were in 2011 with Gilles Duceppe.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. And I could see that there is more overlap when it comes to the policy issues, particularly around immigration. I saw that there was, both Blanchette and Pierre Poilievre were hitting Mark Carney on the Century Initiative stuff. We heard that in both debates. And I think that there could be some commonalities there. It would be interesting if Poilievre formed a minority government and actually teamed up with the Bloc. I think that might, blow up some minds on the prairies to try to understand that coalition, but it might be interesting. Okay, let's move to the...
It's an old social credit alliance.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay, let's move to the juicy stuff that happened at the debate last night. So this is all just a total sideshow. It is so ridiculous, but it's really telling. And so, as folks know, after the French debate, our own Cian Bexty and Alex Sultan managed to get at the front of the line, and they asked 2 of the 4 questions to Prime Minister Mark Carney. Their questions were good, they were tough but fair, and wow, did those clips of those questions ever go viral, overtook the internet, and what we saw was basically a huge reaction from the legacy media. They did not like it, they were not happy, they could feel their monopoly over the news and what they think to be arbiters of the truth, they could feel that slipping away. And so what you saw during the day yesterday before the debate was the CBC basically trying to lobby to have us removed from the debates. Here is David Cochrane on his show with the debates commissioner, basically complaining and saying, how could you let non-government approved, basically, journalists get out there and ask these questions? I actually thought the debates commissioner did quite a good job here defending press freedom in Canada. Kind of wild that you have a CBC interview like this. But anyway, let's play this clip.
Will they be able to do what they did? Like, Rebel News got as many questions as I think CBC, Radio Canada, Press Canadian, and CTV or Global combined last night. There were almost 50% of the questions, and some of them ventured into territory that really are not issues in this election campaign, were not issues in that debate. And I'm not saying reporters should be restricted in terms of what they ask, but if the debate commission is going to organize these things, it didn't seem to have control on it last night, sir.
Well, we're learning from what happened last night, and you'll see, hopefully, a fair representation tonight.
But didn't the same thing happen in 2021? Like, I remember vividly at the museum in Gatineau that the same sort of thing happened with people stacking the microphones and the questions is going in a totally different direction.
Well, there's only so much we can do to control free speech,
I understand that.
You got to understand that.
But, lifeguards got to look after the pool, right? And the debate commission was set up for this. And people are now calling for it to be completely scrapped because of what we saw last night. I just wonder if you think there's a loss of public trust in the function of this organization.
I think the public will judge us on the debates themselves.
Yeah, okay, so you could see that they were setting it up to say that these people shouldn't be here. And I predicted this, that they were going to try to pull something. I thought that they were going to try to remove our credentials or something, that we'd have to go to a federal court, again, like we did in 2019. The reason that True North, Juno News, and The Rebel are allowed in the first place is because we sued and we won. The federal court ruled in our favor. So anyway, let's fast forward to the event itself. And so the journalists are all in a room. They're watching the debate on a screen, and they're sort of getting ready for their part when they get to scrum the leaders afterwards. And what unfolded was just pure chaos. Like I was doing a live broadcast, so I couldn't really pay attention to this stuff. I just kept getting these clips being sent in by our reporters, like, you guys won't believe it, this guy's having a temper tantrum. Here we have, this is a bit on the longer time, this is a reporter from the Hill Times, and he's just not happy with Cian Bexty. He overheard Cian talking about the question that he was going to ask to Mark Carney tonight. He took major issue with that, defending a Liberal candidate who had said some really awful things on social media that Cian was able to get a hold of. Anyway, then the Hill Times reporter turns his ire at Ezra Levant, starts yelling. Ezra, this is sort of just like unhinged behavior behind the scenes. So let's play that clip, please.
I have respect for the industry and the profession.
Sure you do, yeah.
Your little chattering class.
Sure.
You third-party advertisers that you
work
for.
Who are you? Who do you work for?
Rebel News.
Who do you work for?
Rebel News, owned by Ezra Levant, is a different company.
Why are you screaming?
So they can stop spreading misinformation. Also, can you act professional?
Why are you screaming, by the way?
Well, I want to make sure the guys filming it over there get the good audio.
Good.
Can you hear me okay? Am I enunciating properly? Do you have one set up? You got the levels ready for me? Because you're clearly not doing any actual journalism while you're here.
You're supposed to maintain respectful discourse. It's right here in black and white.
Well,
So
when you guys started gaming the rules and threatening to sue because you didn't get your way, I assumed the rules were out the window.
He has third-party advertising trucks driving around this venue right now.
That's not a Rebel News ad on there. You're lying.
Why
are you lying?
It's owned by you. Oh, sorry. The truck is for Canada, which is owned by you, which is separate from Rebel News, which is also owned by you.
You're crazy. You got to control your emotions.
One by one.
So, basically, it was just chaos back there. It was a quiet room. Everyone was trying to listen to the debate. And this one reporter is just yelling at Cian, yelling at Ezra, can't really control his emotions, saying, well, you guys game the system, and therefore I don't have to follow the rules anymore. And so I'm not sure why, if it was that kind of escalation of emotions, or it was just simply because of the questions that we asked last night. But shortly after that exchange that we just showed, the debates commissioner came out in front of the journalists and announced that, yes, the rumors are true. The scrum has been canceled. Let's play that clip.
I'm Michel Cormier, the Executive Director of the Leaders Debates Commission, and I'm sorry to announce that there will be no scrum tonight with the leaders because we don't feel that we can actually guarantee a proper environment for this activity. Alors, comme je l'ai dit, the press room will be open until 11, so you can finish filing. And I invite you to call the campaigns if you want any questions.
That's why. And so they would rather cancel the entire scrum than have to worry about the question that Alex Sultan and Cian Bexty may ask and may get to Mark Carney. I see this as entirely the old guard protecting themselves, right? They didn't want to be outshined again. They didn't want to be embarrassed again by having independent journalists ask better questions, ask more interesting questions, and really dominate. And I think that what happened after the French debate was that independent media we proved that we are here to stay. We're not going anywhere. Our questions are interesting. Our clips got way more views than anything else. I think that our clips probably eclipsed the number of views of the entire French debate. They couldn't let that happen again. They couldn't allow the legacy media to lose their grip, and they couldn't allow Mark Carney to be humiliated once again by a question. So they just had to eliminate the entire thing. What did you make of all of that, Wyatt?
Well, it was a vote of non-confidence in Mark Carney's debate performance. If it was just the fact that they didn't like your guys' questions about Mark Carney did pretty well in the debate, I think they would have let him proceed to the Q&A. It was the combination of the fact that they hate your guys' guts and Mark Carney just looked pathetic on stage that they couldn't have the humiliation continue, both for Mark Carney and the legacy media being boxed out by the independent media. And I like how they're pretending like you're gaming the system by, showing up, being on time, standing in line at the microphones. They could do that same thing to you guys. There's like 150 of them in the room, and there's about, 15 independent media people. What makes it so difficult for them to do what you guys are doing? It's all the thing is that they don't like that the independent media has invaded the Friends Club, because the Friends Club, you can take a question, then I'll take a question. How about we both ask Jagmeet Singh about the same stupid thing about climate change? Everyone thinks it's so these people would think it's clownish that Alex Sultan got up there and asked his question about gender, but it's a good question. It seems, it's not on the topic of the debate. Yeah, but it's something that people like Mark Carney have been dodging for years. He sent his daughter to the Tavistock Institute. It bears asking the question if he actually lives in material reality when it comes to gender.
Well, and the fact that they asked Pierre Poilievre, in January, a reporter for CP24 asked Pierre Poilievre if he thought there were two genders, right? And last year in February, after Danielle Smith announced her ban on these life-altering medications and surgeries, sex change surgeries for children, they asked Pierre Poilievre, they scrummed him. Every member of what you call the Friends Club were pressing him, rightfully so. It's their job as journalists, trying to find out where he stood on this issue. But they refused to do that for Mark Carney. They refused to. So we have to do the job that they refused to do. And so, again, they believe that we are right-wing. The talking points that have come out from the media today is that we are right-wing agitators and that we are conservative and that we have an agenda and that we're trying to raise money. But the reality is that we're simply doing the job that they refuse to do. We are like the mirror image of the legacy media. They come out with bad faith questions against Pierre Poilievre all the time. I don't believe our questions were bad faith. I think that they were genuine. But the way that they see us is the same way that millions of Canadians view them. And they can't cope with that. They can't deal with it. So the shenanigans continued because outside of the event, well, first of all, we had a Liberal staffer assaulting David Menzies of the Rebel on camera. I'm going to play that clip. You can see very clearly that he knocks the camera out of the journalist's hand and then he knocks another camera out. Let's play that clip and I'll get your reaction.
Oh, Terry Gillen! Hey! What are you doing? Terry Gillen!
What are you gonna... Bro, you guys are out. You touched me with that.
No!
I did not touch you. Sir. You're a liar. You're a goddamn liar.
You're a liar.
Oh yeah, nice try, guys. You just hit me.
What are you doing?
So he did it twice. Look, that is not the attitude of a winning campaign. Like, if you were feeling good about your candidate, that was Mark Carney's media person there, Terry Gallon. And to me, he was raging out of control. He hit David Menzies quite clearly twice there on that tape. That's not a confident campaign manager. That's not a campaign that is winning. Those people are flailing out of control because they know they're losing their grip on the narrative, on the media, and they know that their candidate had a very bad night.
And it only had to do with Mark Carney having a bad night that he was acting like that. Because if he had a good night and the Q&A got canceled, hey, it's Mark Carney's birthday because he wants to have a good debate and not be asked any questions about it afterwards, unless it's from, like, Katie Simpson or somebody like Stuart Benson from the Hill Times. So he was only raging because of the bad debate performance. And it's like, hey, guys, number one rule of politics, don't show what you're thinking, like, through your emotions. Do not do that because it's going to be very easy to exploit it. The Conservatives are going to just keep drilling on these debate clips. They're probably going to turn them into advertisements, as they should. There are so many people who don't actually watch the debate live like we were talking about before, but they consume them through clips. So when we see Abacus data coming out and saying that, like, 47% of people who watched the whole debate thought Poilievre won, fantastic. That means if you can get more people to watch the debate clips, they'll eventually come to the same conclusion, which it's pretty difficult to get people to agree that the Conservative won a debate, because since Canada has so many lefty parties, there's a lot of other people who might say, oh, Jagmeet Singh won, or I think Carney won because I'm voting for him. You can get nearly 50% of people to say he won. That's pretty big.
I completely agree. And even the CBC had to admit that the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre won the debate. Here is a clip of the At Issues panel where Andrew Coyne admits that Pierre Poilievre had a great night.
I think Pierre Poilievre made some yards. I think he had a good night. He looked focused. He was confident. He was fluent. He presented his case well. He was not just a critic, but also outlining his own plan. So I think by the normal standards of how you judge these debates, I think he had a good night.
And I do agree with Andrew that Pierre Poilievre had a good night.
But his goal was to sound more prime ministerial and look less like an attack dog that we've come to know in the House of Commons. And I do think that he succeeded in that.
Wow, that feels good. What do you think, Wyatt?
Oh, especially coming from Chantal Hubert, who's made it her life's work to never say something nice about Poilievre. I remember early on when Poilievre had first become the Conservative Party leader, because I have to bring this up. She wrote an article like a month after he became leader. It's like, see, look at his approval polling. He's not very well liked. He's going to be like a terrible Conservative leader. They should go back to O'Toole. It's like, tell us you want the Liberals to win. Just tell us. It's just sad. But, and Andrew Coyne too, he was the main person I saw online yesterday raging about Rebel News and the True North Wire Service and Juno News being at the debate. I don't know if Andrew Coyne even considers himself a conservative anymore. The man is somebody who I guess he considers himself conservative because he wants to conserve leftist institutions and orthodoxies. He would be one of the people saying, don't break up the Soviet Union in Russia in the 1990s because we've had it for a very long time.
I think that's probably right. I don't think that it's interesting, because I think people who, like, for me, I used to read Andrew Coyne when I was in university, and he was one of the people that helped inform my view in becoming a conservative in the first place. And so I think of him as someone on the political right, which makes me even more disappointed to hear his takes night in and night out. But it's interesting because my young staff, like my staffers who are in their 20s and like the Gen Z cohort, like, they don't connect him with the right at all. They just consider him like a hard left Justin Trudeau fanboy in the Globe and Mail and on CBC. And so it's interesting that you said that he's conservative, because I don't think that people even put him in that category anymore.
And it's an attitudinal conservatism. It's again that, well, we should preserve our institutions. So if the CBC has been around for a very long time, well, we should keep the CBC funding going on. And I call him what I call some people. He is an aesthetic moderate. He doesn't like supporting people who sound outside of the normal, even if they're entirely right. I know that this actually happens with Donald Trump a lot, where you'll get kind of like the never Trump Republicans in the US who in fact actually agree with all of Trump's policies, but they don't like Trump because he's not normal. And I see that with people. They're like, well, if you take a photo of, or if you take a video clip of Poilievre talking, he seems very rambunctious and populist, and that's not normal. And then you cut to Mark Carney, and he's boring and consistent, which means that he's the conservative choice in the mind of someone like Andrew Coyne.
It's interesting that we live in such a strange country where you have leftist conservatives, like basically, yeah, people that if you want to conserve Canada's order, you are a leftist because Canada's institutions and Canada's order. I mean, it's a country, sadly, the last 50 years has been built around like socialism and hard left ideas. And so anyone trying to conserve that is actually on the left. I think that when it comes to Andrew Coyne, I think Donald Trump broke his brain. And when I see him, when I hear him, I think he just like lost his ability to be insightful because he's so angry and full of rage. Even yesterday, like Stephen Taylor, who's a conservative commentator, shared a clip of him. I don't want to play it, but he basically was predicting the death of independent media. He said that last night was the nail in the coffin for us. And then Taylor posted that on X and accurately quoted him. And then in the replies, Andrew Coyne was like raging and like accusing Stephen Taylor of working for Ezra. Like, you took my quote out of context. How dare you? Like, anyway, just a very angry, bitter person. And I sort of, in some ways, feel sorry for him. But I do think that last night, all of those shenanigans were all based and rooted in the fact that they are trying to silence us. They could not handle the independent media out there running circles around the legacy media, asking real questions, getting more clicks and more views, and our clips were going viral. And the whole episode was just them, like their last gasp, like raging against the change that's happening in this country, the fact that the independent media is overtaking the legacy media in terms of relevancy and influence. And that was just them like losing grip on their power. This will be the last election that the legacy media has an impact in my estimation.
Well, they were upset that they weren't there to spin the debate exclusively. And if the Conservatives win, and especially if the legacy media at least starts getting their subsidies reduced, you will see wall-to-wall columns about how independent media is what has turned Canada into a fascist state, or whatever the narrative is going to be exactly. There is going to be independent media hysteria over the next 2 years about how independent media did all this to us, even as, everything's fantastic potentially because we might have lower taxes. These are like the most dour people you've ever met in your lives. Everything could be sunny, warm, birds chirping around them, and they'd be like, how can I survive this hellhole that I'm in right now because we don't have Rosemary Barton on television 24/7?
It's so true. Although they won't call us independent media, they'll call us extreme media and right-wing media, and it is like they live in a different universe. I noticed that outside the debates yesterday, there was a feminist protest group that were wearing like Handmaid's Tale gowns, like as if we're going into some kind of like a Christian fascism state. And I'm like, which party are they referring to? Because last I checked, even the Conservatives, it's a very moderate centrist party that is left-wing on social issues, more or less, especially on abortion. So it was just like so out of touch. It's like, what are they talking about? It's like, are they reacting to the American election? Because yes, in the U.S., Trump had a hand in overturning Roe versus Wade, which didn't ban abortion; it just put it back to the states. But it's like, it does feel like they're living in a fever dream.
A lot of people like to live vicariously through American politics, and when something interesting in Canada happens, I think these people get very excited because now I get to LARP as if I'm in a fascist state, even though that's not even what's happening in the U.S. at all. I've never seen a fascist cut the size of government in my life before. But anyways, with many of these people, though, that's why Poilievre did such a good job of the debate with the Trump question. He set the tone at the start that, in fact, if you actually deeply fear Donald Trump, you should be voting conservative because I'll make the country less weak and vulnerable to the predations of the Americans. And now I don't agree that's what's even going on. I disagree with tariff policies from Trump. At the same time, it's not like he's trying to take over the country. The 51st state rhetoric is insane. But if that is your top issue, do you want the people in who have been making the economy weaker, per capita incomes going down, who have been making sure that our military has been basically turned into a DEI HR department? Or do you want the people who are going to, cut your taxes and actually, arm up the military if you are deeply afraid that the Americans are going to run over the Montana border to start taking over Alberta?
100%. Well, I can't wait. I really hope this all happens. I hope that Poilievre wins and then the media lose their minds and blame it on independent journalists. I can't wait for that. I'm here for it. And if that happens, it's going to be a fantastic 2 to 4 years.
It's great for SEO.
Good for Juno News. So, all right, Wyatt, thanks so much for joining the show. I always appreciate the discussion. And folks, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful and blessed Easter weekend. I hope you have some time to reflect on some gratitude and just, our country is not perfect, but God has given us an amazing world, and he's given us his son, which was sacrificed so that we could live eternally. So thank you so much for joining the show. We'll be back again with the final week of the campaign next week. I'm Candice Malcolm. This is Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you and God bless.